Well, hey there, welcome to this next video. I realized it has obviously been a really long time since our last update about sewing the three-piece Simplicity vintage suit. So, if you want to get it done, we probably should move on with it. And I thought today was as good as a day as any. I need to get a couple of prep things done before we can start cutting into the fabric and laying things out. In particular, something I really dislike about the entire sewing process, and that is tracing off the pattern. I love the sewing, I can even get on with the cutting, but the tracing just takes so long, and you know, it just needs to be done before I can start actually making the project. So that needs to be done today. Probably I will try to do the ironing first. I need to iron my entire 3 meters of pink corduroy. Need to figure out if I've washed and pre-shrunk the lining or not. I can't remember because it's been that long since I've come back to this project. And I feel like whenever I'm sewing, my sewing mood really fluctuates with the weather. If it's been gorgeous weather, I just want to keep sewing summer things, and vice versa. If it's cold and chilly, I just want to sew cozy things. I'm pretty sure that's how it goes with a lot of people as well. FYI, you are of course seeing this on the selfie cam or the vlog cam. I'm trying to think of ways I can film this so it's easy for me, but also easy for you to watch and simple for me to edit over on the computer. And I'm thinking these parts, when I need to just sit down and talk to you, will be in this format. I'm just hand holding the camera right now. Otherwise, the other clips where I'm showing you what I am doing with no talking, I can probably just voice over those bits. We'll see what happens as I'm editing through the footage. So let's get productive. Since I have already pre-washed and pre-shrunk my dusty pink corduroy fabric, I'm just giving it a quick iron over before I cut out my pattern pieces. Remember to be smart and actually check your iron to make sure it is not spewing water out at you. Tends to happen with the older irons if you haven't used them in a while. One thing to note, if you're using a fabric with nap or some kind of a directional, you want to iron on the back of the fabric and not the front, especially with things like corduroy or velvet and such. And you want to go for the lowest possible heat setting. Next thing I'm doing here is taking out the pattern pieces that I'm going to be working with today. And like I mentioned, we are just going to start with the skirt portion. You'll want to check that all your pattern pieces are here and then reference the instructional sheet to find out which exact pieces you'll need. As you can see, this is an FF pattern, meaning factory folded, so it's always extra exciting to use those. Now I am just using my normal tracing method to make an exact replica of the actual pattern itself. I have done a full video on how I do this, which I will link down below in the information bar for you. Essentially, I find this so much easier than using the tracing carbon paper method to duplicate the sewing pattern. I have much more control. I prefer using the Sharpie. The lines are nice and bold, and it's just been working out really well for me, so I highly recommend you check out that video. Because our skirt pattern is quite a simple one, there were only 3 main pieces to trace out, so I think we're now ready to go. Well, hey, welcome to another day. As you can tell, the hair is different, the eyebrows are on. I am just back from work, and while we still have a bit of daylight, I wanted to hop on here and quickly talk you through some of the details and technical points that I noticed in the last clip where I traced off the skirt portion of our 3-piece suit. Looking and reading the pattern itself is actually a really important part of sewing, especially when you want to be quite knowledgeable about the construction of the garment. And I thought if you're watching this and kind of learning to sew for the first time, or you're more of a beginner and you haven't really learned to read patterns, this is a great time to just show you the things that I personally noticed and that I would take note of as I am putting the skirt together. And while I was tracing, I figured that we might as well just start with one piece at a time instead of tracing off the top, the jacket and the skirt. The skirt is the simplest one as it's only 3 main pieces. So I'm going to pop you down and talk you through a bit of the finer points in the skirt portion of our sewing pattern. So we are currently looking at the skirt front piece, which is piece number A. And if you look at the waistband right here, you can't see that in the actual illustration. But if you read it, it says that there are soft pleats, meaning the fabric has almost a tuck over effect, and you just sew up the top, but you leave the bottom soft. So it's not a dart where you sew the whole thing down. This gives the skirt a bit of shape and volume, and I find accommodates for your food baby as well. So you will need to notice when there are pleats or tucks, the direction of the pleat. So you're folding the pleat from this way towards that way. And since this is the center of our skirt front panel, it means that the tucks are tucking inwards. So you'll see that once I start cutting the fabric and putting it together. You also want to note that there's ease over here, which probably means that you're going to be, this is going to be slightly larger than your waistband over here, and you'll need to just kind of pull it in together to fit into the contour waistband. And then of course, always remember to mark your seam allowances here. You'll notice over here where it is the side and where the top of the skirts meet at the waistband, I've actually drawn in my seam allowances in the corners because I like to mark that on my fabric so that when I put this into the machine, I know more or less where to start on this side as well as on this side. Another thing that I noticed is that our skirt actually has a side zipper. If you read here, it says leave open left side up to the notch. So this is where our zipper is going to go in, I presume. So it is not a center back zip, it seems to be a side zip. This may affect what type of zipper you want to use. I'm just going to use a regular zipper, so it's not a big deal for me, but it's something to note in terms of how your skirt comes together. Something else that I thought was really interesting is the fact that the hem is noted at 3¼ inches deep. That is this deep of a hem, meaning when you are sewing the skirt, you will fold this part all the way up and then hem it. So the hem is super deep. This is not something that you usually have, or at least I don't think so, in modern commercial patterns, except for things like, you know, really long skirts, dramatic ball gowns. They may have a deep hem, or if you're putting in some kind of a structure around the hemline, like a horsetail braid or horsehair braid or something like that. For example, I just pulled out a simple Gap dress that I have, and if I flip this over, the hem is the amount that you have folded over from the front. So this is the front side, this is the underside. I'm sorry that it's stripes, might be a little bit harder to see. But the hem is actually only about 1.5 inches maybe. And if you measure that to this is a 3¼ inch hem that they want on this pencil skirt. So that is quite interesting. And again, another detail that does not show up when you are simply just looking at the illustration or looking at the back. So always take note to read the finer details on your pattern when you are tracing it. Well, you didn't think things were going to go that smoothly, did you? As I was laying out my fabric, I noticed a problem. Because corduroy has a nap, I couldn't decide which direction of the corduroy I liked better. One was darker and one was lighter. In the end, I did decide to go with the correct flow of the nap, even though it wasn't the color that I had preferred. It just seemed to make more sense, and I think as the suit wears, you know, with kind of wear and tear kind of thing, it will wear a little bit better if I go with the direction of the nap versus against the nap, despite the fact I like the against the grain color a lot more. Here I am just laying out my copied pattern pieces for the skirt, again making sure to smooth things out, and I am pinning on grain. If some of these terms are a little bit new to you, let me know if you would like me to link a blog post or something like that. I'm not going to go into detail about all of these sewing lingo just because it would take a long time. Again, because I am using a corduroy fabric that has a directional nap, I made sure that I laid all of my pattern pieces in the correct and corresponding direction for all of them. You don't want to end up with a front piece that is one way and the back piece that is another way. I find cutting into the fabric always a bit nervous because, you really committed to the pattern once you start cutting it out. Now, you'll remember that the pattern floral fabric is for our interlining or underlining, should I say, and then our pink corduroy is for the outer piece. So I've now cut out both the front and back for both of our pieces as well as the waistband. In our next video, we will get to marking the fabric and maybe a little bit of sewing. I hope that you enjoyed this episode and I'll see you again next time. Bye for now.